Some executions in the Middle Ages were so horrifying that even today no one can understand why such cruelty was inflicted on a human life. Among the most terrifying were the deaths of William Wallace, Marguerite Porete, Joan of Arc, and Conradin of Hohenstaufen. William Wallace, the freedom fighter who died a traitor's death. London, August 23, 1305. The streets are overflowing with people, pressed shoulder to shoulder, waiting for a spectacle that will be whispered about for generations. Today, the English crown will make an example of a man who dared to challenge its power, William Wallace, the legendary Scottish rebel and hero of the Wars of Independence. To King Edward I, Wallace is no hero. He is a traitor, a rebel who humiliated the English army and inspired the Scots to rise against their overlords. His sentence is not just death, it is the full traitor's execution, a medieval ritual designed to break the body and terrify the soul. Before the execution even begins, Wallace is dragged through the streets of London. He is stripped naked, tied to the tail of a horse, and pulled across filthy cobblestones. Stones and mud shred his skin, leaving bloody trails behind him. The jeering crowd spits, curses, and throws rotten food at his broken body. By the time he reaches Smithfield, he is battered, bruised, and bleeding, but still alive, still defiant. The executioner approaches with cold precision. The traitor's death is a ritual, and every step is a message. Hanging until half dead, Wallace is hoisted onto the gallows, a noose tightening around his neck. He jerks violently, gasping for air, his face swelling and turning purple. Just as unconsciousness begins to creep in, the rope is cut, and he crashes to the ground, alive, barely. Castration and mutilation. The executioner then castrates him in front of the roaring crowd. His genitals are thrown into a brazier of hot coals, the smell of burning flesh filling the air. Wallace groans and convulses, his body trembling. A long knife slices open his abdomen. The executioner pulls out his intestines, coil by coil, and burns them before his eyes. The pain is unimaginable. Chroniclers say he never begged for mercy. Beheading and quartering finally, his head is struck off with an axe, ending his torment. His body is quartered, the limbs sent to the major cities of Scotland as a warning, while his head is mounted on London Bridge, where birds will feast upon it. King Edward I achieves his goal, fear. The message is clear: rebellion against the English crown will end in unthinkable suffering. Yet in death, William Wallace becomes immortal. His gruesome execution, meant to break the spirit of the Scots, only cements his place as a symbol of freedom. Even centuries later, his story is told with both horror and admiration, a man who faced the worst agonies of medieval justice and refused to bow. Marguerite Porete. Burned alive for her words. The year is 1310, and the bustling streets of Paris are thick with anticipation. Word has spread: today, the church will make an example of a woman who dared to challenge its authority. Her name is Marguerite Porete, a quiet, intelligent mystic from Hainaut, who wrote a book that the church declared heretical, The Mirror of Simple Souls. Marguerite was no ordinary writer. Her book spoke of a soul's journey to unite with God in a way that bypassed the church's sacraments. To the medieval Inquisition, this was a direct threat, because if souls could find God without priests or rituals, what power would the church have? For years, Marguerite was warned. Copies of her book were burned. She was ordered to stop teaching. But she refused to retract a single word. For that, she was imprisoned in Paris, interrogated repeatedly, and finally condemned to death by fire. On a spring morning in June 1310, a large crowd gathers at the Place de Grève, the main square where public executions take place. Children sit on rooftops, merchants pause their trade, and priests murmur prayers. In the center, a tall wooden stake has been erected, surrounded by bundles of dry wood and straw soaked in pitch for a faster burn. Marguerite is led out in a simple gray robe. Her hands are bound tightly in front of her, the ropes cutting into her skin. She doesn't scream. She doesn't plead. Chroniclers who witnessed the event said she had an unnerving calm, her face serene as if in deep prayer. She is tied to the stake, her back pressed against the rough wood. The executioners stack firewood up to her waist, leaving her head and chest exposed for the crowd to see. They light the fire at her feet first. The first few moments are deceptively quiet. Smoke rises, and the fire crackles, licking the edges of her robe. Then comes the real agony. As the flames catch the straw, the heat becomes unbearable. Marguerite's skin begins to blister, and the smell of burning flesh reaches the front rows of spectators. She can no longer keep her eyes open. The heat is like a wall crushing against her face. People report that she did not cry out, her lips moving silently in prayer, which disturbed the crowd even more than screams would have. The executioners make sure the fire burns slowly, feeding it gradually to prolong the spectacle. Every minute stretches like an eternity. Her legs burn first, then her torso. In the last stages, she throws her head back, her face illuminated by the flames, until finally she collapses, lifeless, still bound to the blackened stake. When the fire dies down, all that remains is ash and charred wood. The church collects the ashes and scatters them into the Seine, ensuring no relic of her body survives a symbolic erasure of her ideas. Marguerite's execution is remembered not only for its cruelty but also for the chilling composure she displayed as she was burned alive. Even in death, she became a silent act of defiance, and her book, once thought destroyed, would resurface centuries later as a mystical masterpiece. Conradin of Hohenstaufen, the teenage king who met the executioner. In the autumn of 1268, the streets of Naples are heavy with tension. A boy, barely 16, stands at the center of a political storm that will end with the swing of a blade. His name is Conradin of Hohenstaufen, the last heir to the once great Hohenstaufen dynasty, and he is about to face a death that will shock the world. Conradin had been born into power and war. As the grandson of the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, he inherited claims to Germany, Sicily, and Jerusalem. But the tides of history had turned against him. His rival, Charles of Anjou, with the Pope's blessing, seized the kingdom of Sicily and branded Conradin a rebel. At just 16, Conradin rode south with an army to reclaim his birthright. He fought with courage but was defeated at the Battle of Tagliacozzo. Captured while trying to escape, he was dragged in chains to Naples. Many thought Charles would show mercy to the boy, but medieval politics rarely spared the young. On October 29, 1268, the main square of Naples, Piazza del Mercato, is prepared for a royal execution. Thousands of citizens gather, some climbing windows and rooftops to see the spectacle. In the center stands a simple wooden scaffold with a block for beheading. Conradin is led to the stage, dressed in black, his blonde hair catching the sunlight. Chroniclers say he appeared calm, though his youth was painfully obvious. The crowd, who once hailed him as their rightful king, wept openly, murmuring prayers. Before kneeling, Conradan removed his gloves and tossed them into the crowd, a symbolic gesture of defiance and hope that his death would one day be avenged. He then knelt on the straw, placing his own head gently upon the block, as if embracing fate. The agony of the blade. The executioner raises his sword. Silence falls over the square. For a brief second, even the wind seems to hold its breath. With a single swing,